Thank you everybody for joining us on the webinar this morning. My name's Alan Cooper from Freestyle. We're a digital product studio and we're the host for this morning's session. Just a little bit of introduction about what we're talking about today and why we're here. As a digital product studio, we come across a lot of customer experience challenges for our clients, and we're continually trying to improve that user and customer experience. And we're fascinated by membership organizations. They're complex, they're interesting, and they're the subject of this talk today, to find out whether 2021 is the time when membership organizations actually need to make a significant change, the challenges that face them. We saw quite a lot of difference in engagement with our clients and our clients' members and other people who engage with these organizations. So we thought we'd put it to the test, and we carried out some research. We researched 2,000 UK adults to find their attitudes towards membership, see whether they'd changed, see whether their opinions were shifting over time, whether it's pandemic related or not. And we found some fascinating results. We put that into a paper which we produced. We saw a lot of blurring of lines between subscription and memberships. And really, that's drawn us to have this fabulous panel here today to discuss some of the outcomes of that and some of the challenges that are faced in their own organisations. I'm not going to dwell any longer on this because the content really is coming from the other members of the panel more than myself, and much more qualified than myself. Chairing today is Morag Cuddeford-Jones. She's a business author, a journalist, an analyst, writing often for some esteemed publications like The Times, E-Consultancy, Marketing Week. With no further ado, I'll hand it straight over to Morag, who's going to carefully navigate our way between the three of us talking this morning. Thank you.
Fantastic, Alan. Thank you very much for a very glowing introduction. That's very, very kind of you. So let me return the favour, and let me introduce our other two panellists today who sit on either side of the membership and subscription fence. First, we have Holly Porter. Holly is Membership Director at BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT. She joined the organisation in 2019, and she's looking after the growth of the membership community and membership products, and the corporate engagement teams. She has experience working across multiple membership organisations where she's led some innovative programmes to deliver more memorable and relevant membership experiences. From the subscription side of the fence, we have Ryan Hall joining us. Ryan specialises in growing product and service businesses with a career creating digital customer experiences for the esteemed likes of Channel 4, for First Direct and Deutsche Bank. He has successfully sold his agency to Karmarama and then Accenture. Founder of Vaunt and most recently Hoohaa. This is a niche fragrance on subscription. Ryan's going to be talking to us about the subscription side of the coin. Now, Alan, of course, you have met already as the co-founder of Freestyle, and he's going to be joining in this discussion to give us his view from, how memberships and subscriptions can make the most of what we hope will be a return to some kind of post-COVID normality in the not too distant future. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we press on. Thank you again all for joining us. It's wonderful to have you. I hope you're going to get a lot out of this session. For ease of communication, the whole panel audience is on mute for the duration, but we are encouraging questions through the Q&A panel. So please don't be shy. This is your time to put some questions to the panelists and get some grade A insights on both memberships and subscriptions from our three experts. So please, that Q&A panel, please make the most of it. And so to kick off, I'd like to ask our three panelists first off to give a bit of their sort of state of the nation in their respective sectors, to highlight what the current issues are in memberships and subscriptions and where perhaps they see us going in the near term. So I think I'm going to kick off with Holly. I've put you on the spot to talk to us a little bit about where we're at with memberships.
Morning, everyone. Thanks, Morag. I think, like everybody else, we're in a period of shifting sands. Membership is a very broad term, so it covers lots of different types of organisation, from trade unions to professional bodies. So my stance this morning really is going to come more from a professional body perspective, because that's where I'm working currently. And so as professional bodies, you know, traditionally, many have long legacies, have been in operation for many years. We're over 70 years old as the Chartered Institute for IT. We've had various different phases through that period, but I think nothing like the last 18 months. And actually what this has done has made everybody sit up and think about you know, how can we remain relevant? How can we pivot? How can we adapt to the changing circumstances, and just accept that we cannot predict, as we used to be able to predict, how our members are going to behave, what their needs are. We have to accept that those are changing. You know, loyalty has been thrown up in the air. And so really it's been the time to sort of re-examine propositions and to, I guess, fast track digital strategies. Many professional bodies are operating with sort of legacy systems behind the scenes. You know, we don't have the luxury of just throwing everything out and starting afresh. So it's how can you work with what you've got so that you don't get left behind. And so I think, you know, we've got the digital revolution, we've got the behavioural revolution, and we've got real need to think about models. And I think what sits at the centre of it for me, though, is, you know, what needs are you fulfilling, and what is your purpose? What are you there for? And trying to stay true to that in all of the changes.
Fantastic, Holly. Thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to move over to Ryan to give us the view from the subscription side.
Thanks, Morag. You know, from my perspective, the idea of creating membership, and I guess the mechanic of subscription, but you know what we're trying to do at Hoohaa is create membership and something that people want to belong to. And obviously that's very much what Holly's saying as well. And you mentioned kind of my key trigger words, Holly, which is obviously purpose, needs, and that kind of rounds up to value for me. The idea that a consumer or a business to business individual customer will join an organization and ultimately pay for it in some shape or form. And again, most importantly, want to stay engaged with them is really the thing that interests me most. And that's why, you know, Holly's trigger word from there is value. And I'm really fascinated on how we can create value for all of our members from a Hoohaa perspective. You know, where we got to, as a bit of background with Hoohaa, subscription was actually never part of the business strategy. We set Hoohaa up as a retailer that was going to disrupt the online perfume market, trying to solve the age-old problem that you can't smell the internet. And that's really the thing that we were trying to deal with. But obviously COVID hit, and that's made us have to really reassess what our strategy was going to be. And as it happens, you know, with a bit of homework and some research and some customer testing, the membership side of our business seemed like it was going to be the strongest opportunity. And, you know, we've only been live with Hoohaa for a month, but we're seeing a really strong adoption rate for people wanting to be part of our club. So if you want to call it a club, say. And coming back to that point of value, I think the interesting thing, you know, in our end of the market, which is, I guess, kind of almost luxury in some respects, is some of that value comes from people wanting an identity. And I'm sure that also applies to Holly's business as well. You know, with memberships like Soho House, for example, you know, there's loads of other, and even some gym memberships, people want that value to come from the service or the product that they actually consume. But it's a brand in its own right. And some people want the cachet of being associated with that brand in their own right. So you can pull a Soho House membership club out your purse by accident at the bar, for example, if you're really that kind of person. Or obviously our ambition is you pull a little sample of Hoohaa out your purse. Obviously I've got a purse as well. Pull that out of your purse, and, you know, immediately that packaging is an identifier for where that person is and their own individual kind of personal brand. So for me, that's exciting. I think the thing that we're learning really is how to make money from it as well, and keep people interested on an ongoing basis, because, you know, it's not just about getting them through the door once, you've got to keep them there.
Fantastic, Ryan. Thank you. I love the idea that you can't smell the internet. I hate to think if we went on Twitter what that would smell like, but there you go. So I think what's really interesting there is that both Holly and Ryan have come up with a number of common themes that I think, Alan, when we've been looking at Freestyle's research, I think that echoes an awful lot of what Holly and Ryan have just been saying, doesn't it?
Yeah, most definitely, and I think you've both touched on some really interesting points that came about. For one, Holly mentioned a lot of legacy systems. I think some membership organisations that have been around around a long time are struggling to keep up with a new way of transacting with members and engaging with members, and very often they're tied in some kind of legacy framework, whether it's technology or whether it's just an attitudinal framework or you'll become more complex over time. The notion of subscription isn't new, but it's kind of the new sexy thing, if you like, on the block, and a lot of the startups operating a subscription service, like the way that Ryan's doing, are able to do it in a much freer way without some of that legacy. So I think there's an open playing field for that. But Ryan also touched on the need and the emotional connection with a brand, or some kind of connection with a brand, and that's fundamental to memberships. Memberships are very complex from the research that we did. Across people that have an emotional need, people that have a legal need or a licensing kind of need to have some accreditation from a different type of organization. So the boundaries are very blurred between the two, but certainly the things that you're talking about are exactly what's been reflected in the research that we carried out.
Fantastic, Alan, thank you. So I think to kick off with my first question, listening to what the three of you have been saying, really, and we had an interesting conversation just as we were preparing for this panel to say, this isn't a fight. This isn't a membership subscriber off. This is, the blurring boundaries that Alan's just referred to. They are two different entities, but it's getting increasingly hard to separate them. And, Ryan in particular, you've come to this model very, very recently, Hoohaa has just been launched, I think you said just for a month. With business models changing all the time, coronavirus has certainly proven that, with people considering going into this kind of marketplace, how do they decide between membership-based or subscription-based? I guess what I'm looking for here is, how are we going to define the two of them so we know which one to choose? Who would like to crack on with that one first? Holly?
I think my point is they probably don't need to choose. We are not naive enough to think that we're the natural home for tech and everybody will come to us and get everything they always need from us. People have long careers, people dip in and out and have different needs at different times. So we are very conscious that our competition now is subscription services, things like meetup groups as well for events. People like that informality and like to be able to pick and choose. But effectively, finding your tribe is something you can do in multiple places. It doesn't have to just be one organisation. And I think what we need to do is think about, well, what are those needs and which ones are we fulfilling? So BCS is the Chartered Institute for IT. We've got a Royal Charter, and that says that we promote education and practice of computing for the benefits of society. So there's a big purpose piece there. What that effectively means is that we can award chartered status. We have some charitable aims and objectives that people identify with and that we need to go out and further. And then we also cater for individuals, for the profession and for society. So actually membership enables us to kind of glue those things together and actually provide an entity for like-minded people who buy the purpose, but also have very specific needs that can be satisfied through the membership proposition. And when I say the membership proposition, that in itself is another challenge, because traditionally many organisations have just put, oh, your membership gives you this, and there'll be a massive long list of benefits, and people get bored by the time they reach number 4 or whatever, or they might not even read it. And so there's a lot of misconception about what people get for membership. So what the challenge that we've got is to really articulate it according to the needs of the person at their career stage. So I've done quite a lot of work over the past 18 months to develop some personas that are based on needs and career stage, so that we can take that broad membership proposition and surface the right things depending on those needs in that career. So it can just be a little bit more focused, which I think is important, particularly if you're playing in such a competitive space with all of these other services.
Fantastic, thanks, Holly. So it's really interesting. I mean, obviously, from a chartered perspective, and I also work with the Chartered Institute of Marketing, so I'm down with being the whole chartered thing. That's quite a structured benefit, and it's a way of holding people close to the organization. That is a conferred benefit. You know, I am a chartered member of BCS. I'm a chartered marketer. I'm a chartered IT professional, etc. In terms, and that really helps with the stickiness. In terms of subscriptions, Ryan, where people are sort of moving into, the benefit is immediate. It comes through the letterbox, doesn't it? So how do you then add to that sort of Soho House vibe that you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we're both trying to do the same thing, you know, obviously one B2B, one B2C, you know, and whether you have that badge that you're a member of a chartered institution, or the key card, or the little mini package in your pocket, or whatever it is that kind of shows you identity. For me, it comes back down to that kind of identity piece. I think that's really important, and I think that's probably where people start with this. And then you've got the value chain, or kind of the value proposition that comes off the back of it, where you're adding value. Now, we've got an easier job, probably in two ways. We've got, I guess, arguably more instant gratification, because something's going to drop through your letterbox every month or 30 days or whatever it is. And there's going to be a moment of surprise and delight. And we're not telling anyone what you're going to get. It's basically a surprise what you get on each of the different tracks. So there is that kind of sense of gratification. But obviously we need to make sure that we're going a little bit deeper than that. And obviously other B2C subscription businesses kind of really play off that moment of gratification. But our problem is, how long will that gratification last? You know, so we're very new with this business, but we're already trying to head off churn rate quite significantly, to make sure that we've got what Holly's got, which is a whole suite of goodies that you could offer to customers, as Holly said, you know, with the persona work, to really understand who wants what and when. We've really only got like 3 tricks up our sleeve, and that's kind of 3 different perfume tracks. One's more accessible, one's middle of the road, and one's kind of like blow your mind kind of crazy perfumes. We've got very little to play with, you know, so we need to invest very heavily from our perspective in diversification of our product range, really leveraging kind of the psychology around FOMO. It's like, what could come next? Like, I don't want to miss that next perfume. Is it going to be a blockbuster perfume that's difficult to get hands on, or whatever it may be? And we really need to leverage I'm going to say club rather than subscription or membership. I guess you want to be part of the club and be seen and socially active, and people going, oh my God, you smell amazing, or oh my God, what's that thing on your Instagram, or whatever it may be. So it's really kind of building into those kind of psychologies, whereas Holly's business is adding obviously significant value at a professional level. We're adding gratification, but everyone needs both, right?
Fantastic, yeah, definitely with the gratification, but also the membership and the ongoing membership benefits. And that's one interesting point, Alan, isn't it? From your research, you delved into what it was that consumers wanted out of memberships. And I think one of the striking things from that research was a lot of them weren't getting what they wanted. And it was, you know.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think that's shown by the number of people, probably over a quarter of people, 28%, I think it was, they were thinking of cancelling the membership because they'd not got enough out of the service, or out of that membership. But a bigger percentage actually was talking really about what Ryan's saying without using the community word. He said club, which is like part way towards a community, a sort of shared interest. And we know that the research shows that 30% of people are looking for a community component of their membership. They feel they want to belong to something. So again, it's that emotional connection. Whereas the subscription is a little bit more transactional. It's a little bit more choice. As Ryan says, you've only got 3 things to offer, whereas Holly may have a rather large list of things that people, not everybody only gets so far down the list. But it showed that the research just showed there's multiple needs for people to connect with their memberships. But yes, they are definitely feeling that they're not being dealt with potentially on an individual level. So the notion of personas, the notion of individualization rather than personalization, is something that I think that where the two models will come very closely together.
Fantastic. I mean, the idea of that community and that regularity, it comes down to the idea of how you get to integrate your subscription and or your membership into that customer's lives. Now, one of the other interesting things that I picked up from the research was this whole idea of habit. One thing that's increasingly become clear over the pandemic is that memberships and subscriptions are quite easy to relinquish. And actually, the big news today, just picked up today, that Netflix is looking like it's about to see a big drop off a cliff potentially, because it's running out of fresh content. Its whole business premise has been, it's chock-a-block with great names, original content, and it sort of saved the film industry when all the cinemas shut down. But they too are running out of their pipeline, and they're looking at people going, oh, well, Disney Plus has turned up, I can just skip over. How are you both, to both Holly and Ryan, are you seeing anything like this? Are you seeing your customers? I know it's harder for you, Ryan, because you've only just been in business for a month, but are you seeing a propensity for people to say, actually, this is a disposable thing for me? And then to say, how can we make ourselves really, really relevant? So of all the potential things that are disposable in my life, this membership or subscription is not one of them.
Yeah, I mean, that is our biggest concern. One is like getting people through the door, but the second thing is keeping them. I guess fortunately for us, today we're Disney Plus, not Netflix, because we're new and there are a couple of other competitors in the market. Now we're looking at how we differentiate, but there's only a finite number of perfumes in the world. Now we've obviously gone down the niche route, but it's not entirely unique. There are a couple of competitors that do include niche perfumes, but we've set out our stall, as Netflix versus Disney are able to do. Like they've got their stock, as it were. And for us, it's going to be about ensuring that we can keep diversifying, making sure that we can look at home fragrance as well as personal fragrance, for example. Car fragrance, ironically or weirdly, is like having a massive rise right now. Everyone seems to be doing like car fresheners, but like the big brands are doing car fresheners. So, we'll always look at that kind of diversification. But I think, churn is just going to be a natural thing, unfortunately, and we don't have enough data to be able to model that yet. But I think probably us, and I'm not going to speak for Holly, but I'd assume we're going to have a harder job keeping customers than maybe Holly will, because there's a significant amount of kind of professional added value there. Whereas we are at $14.95 per month, a very discretional purchase. And, like a Netflix or like a Disney Plus, people will switch it off. They'll get bored, or they'll realize that they've had enough perfume and they can't possibly need any more perfume. But then there'll be some customers who just can't get enough and they'll have 2 subscriptions, for example. That for us is going to be the interesting thing to see how the data pans out for the next few months for us.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you can knee-jerk and panic, but that's probably the wrong thing to do. The best thing to have is to have a strategy, but to keep looking at the data and almost know when to act on it. I mean, when the pandemic first hit, it probably took until about the end of April, for us to start seeing issues with retention. And it was natural, and everybody started panicking. Membership numbers have really been under the spotlight for the past few months, but we're actually back in a situation of growth. And what we've found is that when we've been looking at, we did a few things quite early on. Things like we extended the window that people could pay their subscription to 4 months. We have a hardship rate anyhow, but we extended that to the impact of COVID on household income. And sort of made that available, so we had more uptake there. And we were about to implement a subscription increase. So it had been approved at the AGM to go live at the beginning of May. So we had to roll that back really quickly, because I think that just would have been an absolute PR disaster. And although it was 2%, it wasn't sort of megabucks, it was totally the wrong thing to be doing, and would have sort of sent out all the wrong messages about our empathy with our membership. So we managed to roll that one back and freeze the fees for the whole year. But what the interesting thing that we found was that we have an exit survey that we look at, and through the pandemic there were fewer people who've left because they're not finding value in their membership. The financial reasons had really gone up, and actually the engagement of our existing members was higher. And I think this is the key to retention, is where I say if you can get members quickly to do two things in their first six months of membership, you're much more likely to keep them. Because there's a natural attrition point at between 1 and 2 years when a lot of people fall off. And I think it's like a gym membership, isn't it? You don't go to the gym and you don't take a subscription out and sit at home and expect it to deliver you value. You actually have to do something to work towards it. And so this is where I think there is a difference between membership organisations and subscription models, because membership organisations have to accept that they are not for everyone, even though the spectrum and the potential might be really broad because of all the different touch points across the career. There's almost a character of person who's more likely to find affinity with a professional body, because they're prepared to put a little bit in to find things out, to connect with other people, to to go and use some of the tools that are available in the member portal. People who aren't prepared to do that we're going to lose them. So actually what we're really trying to do is say, well, if you want to develop your career, we're here for you, we're the right people for you, and position it in a way so we don't just get people sort of throwing us a bit of cash and then heading out the door 18 months later. But it is a fact of life, as Ryan quite rightly said. You have to live with it.
Fantastic. I think that's thrown up a really interesting question for me that I'd like to direct to Alan, if that's okay, which is that I see a lot of parallels between the membership arena and something like insurance. So memberships are typically a year-long thing. And at a very basic level, you pay your membership fee at the start of the 12 months, and somebody contacts you again in month 11 to say, can you pay it again, please? Oh, and it's gone up. I think one of the big learnings with the insurance industry is that not everyone has a claim, otherwise the insurance industry wouldn't be an industry anymore. So they don't have any reason really to speak to customers and generate loyalty and generate engagement. In terms of selling those memberships and to a degree subscriptions, so if we look at things like B2B tech subscriptions, for example, these are slightly complex products, and we tend to lose people during that membership if we don't teach them how to get the most out of that membership. Alan, in terms of the research and also in terms of what Freestyle does for its clients, how can you encourage those who want to have a membership model to help their members make the best of their membership?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we see it in the research, and we see it borne out by the work that we do, and actually it's also what Holly and Ryan have both been talking about as well this morning, and I think it's actually moving away from that notion of loyalty towards what you said just a moment ago, which is about habit forming, and loyalty and habits can be created by delivering memorable experiences and peak points of positive experience in that customer journey. So the insurance companies need to find ways of delivering something which is beyond just the renewal, because then that becomes just much more of a transaction. There's no kind of emotional connection to them. But I think was it Direct Line or Admiral that gave some money back because of people's not spending not driving the cars, and so there was £25 I think refund on everybody's personal insurance policies, and they also it must have been Admiral, because they made a big deal of that across a multi-car policy. So what they're doing then is identifying the individual customer and their particular characteristics and giving them a trigger for some behavior, giving them a reason for that behavior, and giving them some kind of reward for that behavior. So over time that builds up almost like a digital loyalty. It's not the conventional loyalty of I've been a member of them for the National Trust for years, and I'm only ever going to go walking there. And also recognizing that very often the the memberships aren't always individual. I mean, in the cases of the Ryan's and Holly's examples, many of them are individuals, but some of them are corporate, that have many different people within that organization that want different needs. If I go onto Amazon, I've got my whole family have different profiles and have delivered different content based on them. So I'm only paying one subscription. It's only coming to me. I'm the only one with an email that reminds me of what I have to do. But there's multiple layers behind it, and creating those individual connections with everybody that has a slightly different need is where I think all those organisations can create these peak memorable experiences.
Fantastic. I mean, throwing that over to you, Ryan, you already talked about the fact that, you've got the subscription perfumes. You're already going to be having the personas and the certain degree of tailoring by people's preferences of what they want to smell like. But in terms of increasing, we talk a lot about content when it comes to marketing and just shoving out content. And, content is, I've engaged with my members because I've shoved them a bit of content. How can we be a little bit more sophisticated about the whole thing and really create that sense of this is for me and they're speaking to me regularly, not just to sell me something?
Yeah, I think for me the ethos is don't sell. We don't want to be just plugging product, especially to our existing membership base. We want to be adding value. So we have got a content series launching where we've got interviews with perfume makers and nosers and specialists in that space, where we're going to continually add value. I think the interesting thing for us in the personas is we've got very polarized audiences. You've got the frag heads or the fragrance community who just want to know everything about everything they want to know about. And, they're very, very active in the community. Not that there's necessarily one home or hive for them, but they're across a variety of different channels. So for us, we want to be engaging with them at a very one-to-one human level through social media engagement, having conversations, building relationships, bringing them into our brand, getting them on Instagram Live, for example. Some of the more sophisticated, educated influencers that really, really do know their stuff, even though they've got zero background. So we want to bring them in and have a voice as much as we want the perfume makers to have a voice. And I think by, bringing that kind of very human and non-salesy approach, you just build the right values within the community and values within your audience base, and you can do more with it. And I think if you're doing the right thing, you're building something that people have value in, the money should then come. And there'll be churn, naturally. There are apps that you will be, and we may not sell as many kind of full bottles of the perfume over the actual subscription bottles themselves. But I think our value within the brand is like, do the right thing, create something that adds value, and then the money will hopefully come. I hope that quote doesn't come back to haunt me one day.
It's all right. Kevin Costner already got there with Build It and They Will Come in Field of Dreams. You're fine. Kevin Costner the blame can be laid at his feet for pretty much everything. So, I mean, there's an interesting sense there. And the way that we've been talking so far has been very much in one direction. It's what can we as institutions, organizations deliver to our customers and to our members. What are we talking about if we can get customer centricity? Doesn't just mean targeting on a personal level. We were talking about community, getting them involved, actually getting the members or the subscribers to become part of that process, to co-create their own membership experience. Holly, if I can bring that to you, how much is it possible for me as an active member, as a chartered member, to not just start receiving member benefits, but to start co-creating an experience that will be a long-lasting benefit to both of us, I guess?
There are more and more opportunities to do this. I mean, I think we've struggled for quite a long time because we've had this quite lofty purpose in terms of making IT good for society. But the membership bit's got a bit lost because people have thought, well, I can see what you're doing up there and I agree with all of it, but I don't need to pay you to benefit from that because you're doing the work anyway. So while I've been doing quite a lot of work to position membership according to the persona needs. And actually, we've got a new theme for membership, which is all around shape the future. Let's shape the future together, which implies this sort of active piece that I was talking about before. What we've also done is really kind of honed in on that purpose and set some really clear policy priorities over the past few months, and which seems to be working really, really well. So we now major on the link between professionalism in tech and public trust. So we saw things like the algorithms and the exams, and how that really eroded public trust. And so we talk about the link between professionalism and particularly in really high stakes projects and why that's important. We talk about diversity and inclusion because there are many underrepresented groups in tech that we want to address. And we talk about the digital divide, and I think this is something that's come into really sharp focus through the pandemic, where there's been all this, there's been a lot of publicity about access to devices and the importance of devices in schools. And so we've really been able to play in this space because we have a big schools and education part of our charitable purpose. And so what we've done is we started having things like open policy briefings with our members, so that they, so the president had held one on digital divide a couple of weeks ago, and it was an open Zoom, which is sort of quite a challenge logistically, so everybody could speak. And he had a couple of panelists, and we were talking about, and the question was, well, what is BCS's role in this? What should we be considering? What should we be doing? And we've made some fantastic stakeholder connections through that, and actually sort of are finding our path in what is actually quite a crowded space. We have a regular policy briefing that goes out to all of our members, and also, we had a link with some of our local branches and Age UK, so that our members who with technology backgrounds could help the local branches of Age UK with getting elderly people online. So I think if you've got a clear purpose, there should be lots of opportunities to bring that to life through the membership rather than just firing out comms. And we're quite lucky because we've got a network of about 100 branches and specialist groups, so we've got a ready-made network. But what we've seen in this period, particularly under diversity and inclusion, is that the representation wasn't strong enough. So we have a new specialist group around ethnic diversity called Embrace, that has been member led, and we held our first LGBTQ plus group last week. And again, that was about responses from our members and a gap that they saw, but it's perfect because it aligns really well with the job that we want to do with our policy, and in terms of the levelling up and bringing all the groups into the industry. So I think there are lots of opportunities. It's just sort of spotting them and trying to make sure that it's not fully orchestrated by you in the centre. It's very much member driven.
Fantastic. I think lots of opportunities was possibly an understatement there, but there's certainly clearly a wide range of opportunities for members to get in and to influence and to feel like they're playing an active part. Now, Ryan, I'm not going to ask a company of 1 month old to mirror a similar sort of behaviour as I think Holly mentioned something like 70 years or 70-year legacy business. But are there any sort of thoughts from your perspective? And I think often we undeservedly tar subscriptions with being throwaway, with being very light touch and not important. You can dip in, dip out, that'll do. They can be quite meaningful, and they can, as you say, the gratification moving on from that. Have you had any thoughts about, and you mentioned in terms of your Instagram, maybe your power frag heads, your power users, about how they can bring in the community and people can start interacting more?
Yeah, I think what we've learned, and we've been in the perfume industry for nearly 3 years now, because we launched a perfume brand first, and then we've tried to eat the value chain by getting into retail and then obviously a subscription. And what we learned was, if you look at the social sphere, the social space, like these huge influencers with massive following, they actually don't really get the level of very close engagement that we want as part of a membership subscription club style business. So what we found is like the micro and the nano influencers, anything from 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe up to 50,000 influencers, actually deliver a significantly higher amount of engagement, and then they bring people in. So they are either sharing, talking about our business or our products. They're talking to us. We're engaging them in some form of dialogue, be it a live or a webinar or an interview, whatever it is. And it's surprising how much pull those kind of smaller influencers actually have. And that has given us a lot of traction socially, which has been phenomenal. I guess the question for us is, how do we kind of keep our hands on that community a little bit more effectively? So in our head is, do we have the right to build a perfume community? And you might look at Instagram and go, well, what's the point? They're all there and you can get to them. But I think the opportunity that Holly has with her membership base is like everyone's kind of in the circle of trust, as it were, and you can get at them more regularly. And because we're a young business, we are incredibly agile around our strategy, decision making, but importantly, the technology that we can choose. So we can put technology in to automate or surface insights, data, or try something new, even a rapid stand-up community, just to see whether we can test that scenario. We can do it incredibly cost effectively. We can do it incredibly quickly, and we can also throw that away very quickly if we decide that it's not the right thing to do. So not suggesting at all that Holly's business can't move at pace, but because we've got no legacy, which are pros and cons of, we can do things differently. And because we're a micro organization, only a 10-person team, and everyone's doing everything. I mean, I was like labeling influencer envelopes at the weekend so they could go out, all fun and games. Like we can do things much more rapidly and in a lean fashion. And it's an old adage, but we can actually fail fast, so we can work out what's not going to work for us, because we really do not have the answers. 20 years in digital strategy, customer experience, it takes you so far, but selling perfume online as a subscription is a relatively new thing. So just being able to be disposable in our own right is a massive benefit.
Fantastic. I think that's a really important learning. The idea that micro influencers, we tend to, particularly as marketing, tend to go for those big volumes. The big numbers are what resonate with success, and we think that's what's going to resonate with the higher ups. I was watching quite a horrifying version of The Twilight Zone, also on Netflix, last night, where I think it was a 10-year-old boy became president because he had 50 million views on YouTube. And I looked across at my 13-year-old son and went, don't even go there. But yeah, so it's, thinking big sometimes means, thinking small, and tech lets us do that, provided obviously I don't think that we get too tied up in the minutiae, but we can, use micro influencers and they will exponentially drive our business. I'm aware that we're getting close to the end of the session, and I do want to squeeze in some of our audience questions. So just very quickly to sum up, I'm going to come to you all in order of Alan, Holly and Ryan. So you're forewarned. First of all, I think, Alan, just to give us your views on where you see the membership subscription model going next in the near term, perhaps having been influenced by COVID, and also looking at perhaps some of the recommendations that you've had in your recent research as to what these two types can do to succeed in the future. And then I'll come to you, Holly and Ryan, to give us your ideas on, what your biggest priorities are going to be for energizing your business post-COVID and this new normal. Oh God, I said new normal.
Thank you. And I think I was going to pick up on something which actually ties straight into this from what Ryan was just talking about. And that's really about the principle of experimentation. Whether you're an established membership organization with tens of thousands of members across different types of membership, or you're a subscription model, you can find bodies of people to give them, well, we know the research says that I think it was 30% of people want community and interaction with others. So give them these forums, give them these tools to be able to expect to have their voice. Experiment, fail fast, as Ryan's just talked about. Try these little micro movements. give everybody a beta access to something that'll make them feel as if they're part of something that the membership is allowing exclusively for them, whether it's exclusive or not. But I think the future is to continually to make these small nudges. I think definitely to move towards a stronger individualization of their experience, to give them a personal value of belonging, whether it's subscription or membership. The individual has to feel that they're connected and that they're part of something which is helping them, whether it's helping them be a better IT professional, whether it's helping them visit museums more often, or whether it's helping them smell nicer in the street. That sense of community and personalization is very important, I think.
Fantastic, Alan. Holly, can I come to you with your proposals for where you're going next?
Yeah, I think the list is huge, but we're starting to look at the membership structure in terms of the grades and the requirements, and trying to really make that a lot more open and inclusive than it has been, because we do have all of the professional registrations that you can demonstrate your credentials through those. You don't necessarily need to confuse that with membership in terms of the years of experience or whatever else. So we want to open up membership and sort of reset it so that it's more in tune with the tech community of today. So that's quite a big project, because we have a heavy governance requirement there to get that agreed. And we also want to really strengthen the routes, our links with the routes into industry, so not just the traditional routes, which are things like the accredited degree courses, but looking at the newer qualifications like T-levels, looking at career changes, the digital boot camps that are springing up everywhere, so that we can kind of hold people's hand and bring them into the industry and create that value from the outset. So connecting up those routes. And then the other thing is definitely the customer experience, and allowing us to move more towards that individualization that Freestyle mentioned in the report, which is the sort of holy grail. We'd love to get there. We're not there yet, but trying to take the persona work and start with a bit of curated personalization. And then hopefully, map out how we're going to get to a more individual experience over time.
Fantastic. Individual experiences definitely seem to be the way forward. Ryan, a little prognostication from you? Is that
I think we are more inside a subscription, membership and rental economy than we actually realize. I grew up with a CD collection, and I don't think that exists anymore. I don't know anyone who has a CD collection. I don't even have a CD collection anymore. You just got to look at the way that businesses like Airbnb and WeWork are disrupting, and especially so with businesses like the automotive industry, like the future of mobility. There are a number of car subscription services. Even Land Rover has one. Like, there are premium brands out there that you can just subscribe to a car and swap a car and get in and get out and do whatever you want to do as it fits your life and the way that your life is evolving. I think it's going to be all about not really owning anything. I think it's going to be a bit being part of brands and businesses that you want to associate with, and that'll be a little bit of a revolving door, and hopefully that'll work out well for the perfume industry.
Fantastic, Ryan. Thank you. That actually leads us very, very neatly into our first question, the whole wanting to be part of brands and businesses and aligning yourself really closely with what these people provide, not just in terms of service, but who they are and what they say perhaps about you. That we've got one question here, which is, how important is the role of the CEO of the membership organization? So it's not just about the brand. Do we not engage more with people now? So Holly, if I throw that over to you first.
Yeah, just thinking about our CEO, I think it is about that horizon scanning and making those connections, making sure that we've got the right balance of activity within the business, making sure that we're connected with the right type of partnership. So it's almost the steering of the ship. We have the president's role as well, which is much more ambassadorial. So our current president is heavily engaged in all of our policy work, and that's really brilliant for our advocacy and visibility. The CEO role is, very different to that, but incredibly necessary in terms of our longevity, our balance, and our ongoing partnerships.
Fantastic. Ryan, do you have something to add?
Yeah, Lorenzo, who we founded Hoohaa and actually Vaughan together, he's our CEO. I'm the annoying kind of chief brand person who tells him that everything doesn't look quite good enough. But his role in the organization, I mean, obviously everyone's writing the theme tune, singing the theme tune, kind of dancing the theme tune, all that kind of stuff. But he's very, very much kind of spanning future business strategy with low-level customer engagement. And I think for us being kind of brand new out the box, we want to create a very modern business that is flat and accessible, because we are going to be a social first business, or are a social first business. We don't want to be inaccessible to anyone. We want to be able to ensure that, we can go from, right, well, what does our product roadmap and our brand partnership roadmap look like for the next 12, 18, 24 months? And where are our technical innovations coming from? Down to talking to a customer who might have 150 followers, but just wanted to either give us some feedback, complain about something, or tell us how much they love the perfume. And it's a very, very kind of stretchy line of responsibilities. Again, might be proved that we can't do it, but I think in today's kind of social society, you need to be accountable and accessible to anyone who wants to talk to you.
Fantastic. We do have another question for you, Ryan, which Holly can jump on afterwards as well, but I think it might actually already be happening in Holly's organization. Here's the question. It says, can you connect your members together? We find that people come for content, but stay for community and personal connection. Could you, for example, co-create perfumes with your audience?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that idea. For us, it's about bringing people together and trying to involve anyone and everyone in a conversation, whether it's in a comment section of an Instagram post, whether we're bringing people in and out of Instagram live style experiences, and getting people's feedback. So that there's a wonderfully quirky guy over in Wales. His Instagram handles A Life in Scent, and he's fully bonkers. He's only got 2,500 followers, but we engage with him and we are listening to him, because actually he's got a much better finger on the pulse as to what new perfumes are coming out. There's a guy called Olfactory who's based up in Leeds, who's only been doing this. He's only been in the perfume industry for 6 months as an influencer, but he is like the king of perfume discovery, so we really want to listen to those people and make sure that we're working with these people to steer our product roadmap. Creating products is really interesting. I mean, that becomes a little bit harder because we're working with perfume makers. So it's almost like, because we don't make the perfume in this instance, it's like, can you get kind of 3 sets of people on the same page? But I love the idea and I might even steal it. So thank you very much for that.
Excellent. So, Holly, I mean, I imagine from a membership perspective, from a chartered institution perspective, that pre-pandemic you will have had events and networking, etc., which may have been a bit trickier to manage online. But how are you managing that community interaction where it's, we as the membership organization are just letting you guys get on with it?
Yeah, I think we played a bit of catch up. We were quite quick to turn all of our events online. That went really well. So we just bought more licenses and enabled our groups and branches to hold online content. And that's been really successful. We've also, we're looking at community forum, so a discussion forum. So that's something we want to launch in June. And I think there are other opportunities for different work groups. So we've just creating a fellows group to co-create thought leadership content around emerging technologies and techniques, which we felt was a bit of a gap in our content plan. But we're in the centre, we're not the best people to do it. It's all of our experts. So we're using our experts, and their names will be attached to that, and we'll be using their brands and their expertise within the Chartered Institute for IT, which is great. So differing ways. I think we've got a bit further to go, but exciting times. We'll get there.
Fantastic. Looking at the time, we have time just to squeeze in one very quickly answered last question, which is, it's the interesting one, which is, if members are looking to leave a scheme, how proactive, I take from proactive, I mean, maybe aggressive, should you be in trying to keep them or get them back? And what are the best tactics? And I'll open that to all 3 of you. So I'm just going to let whoever wants to answer that one first, go.
Well, we make it very easy because you find a lot of these cancel buttons are hidden on websites, which is really annoying. So we let you pause, and we also let you switch programs in case you just want to change. But for us, we'd like to think that, even if you turn your perfume subscription off, you'll still say it's part of the community. I mean, for us, it's not necessarily about just the revenue generation. We want people to be part of the movement.
So we communicate quite early when the renewal's coming up. So we try and head it off, but we don't hide any of the buttons. We make it really, really easy. But what we have done is created a status called BCS supporter, which is effectively a subscriber. And this was done deliberately around making sure that we had a data relationship with a wider group of people. So initially we attached it to our events, which are attended by non-members, and also our website. But this is a really neat option to tag on to when people are leaving. So we can say, oh, do you want to keep in touch with us? And so we still maintain that data relationship and those permissions, and then we can hopefully bring them back in at a later date.
Fantastic. And Alan, you got some suggestions?
Yeah, I think for me is if people want to leave, that's fine, but don't ever let them leave because you've failed to do the work beforehand to encourage them to stay. So don't be the insurance company that sends them the quote, sending them off to go and find the other one. Make sure that they're engaged, they're part of that community, they've had their individual experience, their customer experience is great, which will hopefully keep them there. But if they still want to leave even after you've done all the right thing, then yeah, you've got to leave the door open for them to do that. But maybe ask them if there's some way in which you can continue to correspond with them to tell them what's changed. If you're getting a lot of people leaving for the same kind of reason, address it, be open, transparent, all the good PR skills that we're all taught. Some of those are still relevant now, even though we think we may have moved away from some of those old communication skills. But yeah, do the work up front, and you'll have a lot fewer people leaving.
Fantastic. In other words, keep that stable door firmly bolted before any horses get involved. Look, thanks, guys. I think that really is all that we have time for just now. If you are in the memberships and subscriptions business, then the points discussed today do resonate with you. Head over to freestyle.agency/membership and you can grab a copy of the white paper and the research that we've been talking about today, and also thinking about how the coming year is going to affect you. I'd like to thank our panelists, Holly, Alan, and Ryan, and I'd like to thank you, our audience, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.